Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be talking about Transcendentalism. This is one of the subgroups that fall under this idea, this larger umbrella of Romanticism. So you're going to see some of the same attributes that are associated with Romanticism also fall into this idea of Transcendentalism. But the transcendentalists are going to take some of these romantic ideas and take it one step further. So, the first thing that we need to look at is the prefix trans. When we're talking about the prefix trans, we're talking about changing or moving something or someone from one place to another. Go ahead and take a couple of minutes and think about some words that you're aware of that have the prefix trans in them. So, some of the words that I wrote down are transport, when you're moving something from one place to another, like transportation in this case. Transplant is when you're moving something, again, also from one place to another. That could be a person, that could be an object. A lot of times that could be an organ. And then when we also talk about transgender, we're talking about moving from either male or female and um, changing your your body to be that of the opposite gender, male or female. Okay? So this word is going to play a very important role in what the meaning of transcendentalism is. So again, we're talking about moving from one thing to another. So we're moving from this idea of being very materialistic and conforming to the society that we live in to going to this very individual society, these individual beliefs. So we're going from this idea that material is important, objects are important, what you have, and making sure that you're doing all of the things to fit in to society. So think about that idea of the Puritan society and the way that everyone was trying to make sure that they were following all of the same rules. Well, a transcendentalist is going to be the complete opposite. They are going to focus on this idea of being an individual. They are going to be someone that thinks for himself or herself, that doesn't really necessarily box themselves in and conform to the rules that society is dictating. A transcendentalist is also someone that's going to want to pursue life based on internal happiness. It doesn't matter how much money they make. It doesn't matter if they live in a tiny house. It doesn't matter if they have, very little money. As long as whatever they're doing makes them internally happy, then that's all that they really care about. So, some of the characteristics of transcendentalism are that these people believe that everything is a reflection of the divine or God. Okay, God makes things happen. There's a reason why I had this experience, and it was to bring me to this place. God meant to do this to bring me here. Okay, so the idea that people and really everything is this reflection or greater plan of the divine or of God. They also believe that the physical world, meaning like here on earth, is sort of a doorway into the spiritual world. So, this idea of always sort of being in nature, they look to nature, they look to the physical world as a way to connect with the spiritual world, a way to connect to what happens after. Not necessarily a bad thing, but this connection between the spiritual and the physical world. Transcendentalists believe that one is directly connected to the other. These people are going to use their intuition. So we're still focusing on that gut instinct, but they're going to use their gut instinct not only to trust their own decisions, but they're also going to use that intuition to get a sense of God in nature. And they're also going to use that intuition really to sort of follow their soul. You know, God is wanting me to do this, or I feel like a higher power is drawing me to make this decision. These people are going to believe that they are their own best authority, which makes a lot of sense in the idea that only you know what's best for you. Only you can make the decisions that are right for you. The idea of feeling and intuition over logic and reasoning is important when we talk about romanticism, but transcendentalists take it one step further. They're not just saying that they value feeling and intuition over reason and intellect. They are saying that your intuition and your feelings are far superior than any logic, any reason, any fact, any sort of concrete support that is there to help guide you. So, overall, transcendentalists believe that all forms of being, okay, whether it's God, whether it's nature, whether it's humanity, meaning people, we're all spiritually united through a universal soul, or what we call an oversoul, like a big sort of umbrella, right? They believe that everything is connected, that it's almost like a triangle where God, nature, and humanity are the three corners, and they're all connected. If one piece of that triangle is missing, then the whole thing is going to collapse. So they really believe in this delicate balance. So one of the most famous transcendentalists is Ralph Waldo Emerson. So we're going to take just a couple of minutes and kind of go through some biographical information, because you need to understand really what happened in his life to understand how he got to the point that he was when he really started writing all of his essays. So Ralph Waldo Emerson was born in 1803 on May 25th in Boston, Massachusetts. He was the son of William and Ruth Emerson. His father was a clergyman, so part of, religion, as many of his male ancestors had been. So his father died when Emerson was 8, and unfortunately this left his mother to sort of be a single mom to 6 children. His aunt, her name was Mary Moody. She was a writer, and she took a huge interest in the education of all of her nephews, And it's really likely that she probably played a very large role in Emerson's development as a writer. So, at age 14, on scholarship, he actually enrolled in Harvard College, where he won lots of prizes for writing. And then, interestingly, in 1825, he enrolled in Harvard Divinity School. And a year later, he began his career as a Unitarian minister. So ultimately, he became the chaplain of the Massachusetts Senate. So he gets married to Ellen Tucker, who was the greatest love of his life in 1829. She unfortunately wound up dying of tuberculosis in 1831, just like most of the people of Emerson and Thoreau's time. Emerson was grief stricken. Her death devastated him. He really struggled with dealing with his grief, and it took a really heavy toll on his religious faith. So he resigned from being a pastor in 1832, and he flat out told his congregation that he no longer believed in celebrating the Holy Communion. So he ultimately travels to Europe and spends lots of time kind of frolicking around. When he returns in 1833, he begins to lecture on topics of spiritual experience and really ethical living. He winds up moving to Concord, Massachusetts, and gets remarried. And that's when his ideas and his philosophies really started to take shape. So in the late 1830s, early 1840s is when he really started writing down his lecture materials and turning them into essays. And these works explain various aspects of his transcendentalists' philosophy. So remember, these transcendentalists, they stand against materialism. They stand against the idea of institutionalized religion. They believe in religion, but they stand against the idea of the institution of religion. Like you should be going to church every week. You should be saying your confession. You should be, going through and saying the rosary and all of this. He didn't believe in that. He believed that you can have a relationship with God and it doesn't have to be under some sort of structured higher institution like Catholicism. The third part of this is that transcendentalists were 100% against slavery. So, with this and all of his essays, Emerson ultimately becomes known as the central figure in his literary and philosophical group, and which is now like the American Transcendentalists. So these writers shared a key belief that each individual, here's that trans word, could transcend or move beyond the physical world of the senses into a deeper spiritual experience through free will and institution. So let me explain that to you again. They believe that an individual can transcend or essentially move beyond the physical world in order to have a deeper spiritual experience. Okay. So think the pray part in Eat, Pray, Love, if you've kind of seen that movie and know what I'm referring to. So in this school of thought, they essentially believed God was not unknowable, These believers of transcendentalism understood God and themselves by looking into their souls and by feeling their own connection to nature. So, in his last few years, Emerson's memory really seemed to be failing him, which really embarrassed him. And it ultimately caused him to stop having public appearances. He stopped reading, he stopped speaking because his memory really seemed to fail him. And ultimately, he was found at his house um, and died from pneumonia. But his ideas and the strong influences of his work ultimately are looked at by Henry David Thoreau, who we're also going to talk about, and Walt Whitman, among others. So some of his writings are actually considered major documents in 19th century American literature. One of his most repeated phrases is the phrase, trust thyself. This is the epitome of what it means to be a transcendentalist. And this was written in one of the essays that we're going to read excerpts from called Self-Reliance. I hope this helps give you a little bit of background on Transcendentalism and Ralph Waldo Emerson. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in class. Bye.